What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday's Season 1 Reloaded update for Modern Warfare 3 came with a ridiculous amount of weapon balancing. So in today's video, we're going to be diving deep into these stats, and I'm going to be sharing exactly what changed before and after. However, since this list is so long and many of these changes applied to Modern Warfare 2 guns, in order to make sure this video isn't like an hour long and comes out next week because it'll take that long to put all the graphics together, when it comes to the Modern Warfare 2 guns, I may be glossing over them a little bit, but I'll at least let you know in practical terms what changed with those, whereas with the Modern Warfare 3 guns, I will be covering them with the normal level of detail. And let's just dive right into it with the assault rifle category, starting it off with the Modern Warfare 3 assault rifles. We've got the SVA 545. This actually got a little bit of a damage buff, and while this was a very subtle damage buff that doesn't actually change the number of shots to kill within the given ranges, what it did do is it now guarantees a 5-shot kill anywhere in the body in that maximum damage range, whereas previously it was a little bit unforgiving. If you managed to mix in any leg shots, you had to hit 3 out of your 5 shots to the torso. So this definitely makes this gun more forgiving, but I mean, if you were really accurate in the first place and you were consistently hitting torso or arm shots, you probably won't notice any difference whatsoever. After that, the Holger 556 caught a little bit of a nerf, but this was just to the sprint out time. Our standard sprint out time went from 231 milliseconds up to 252 milliseconds, so it's going to be a little bit less effective for rushing around the map. Next, with the DG58, this caught a pretty massive nerf to its damage ranges. As you can see there, our 4-shot kill potential went from about 35 meters down to just over 20 meters. And honestly, I don't think it needed that much of a nerf. I don't think it was that good after the nerfs that it had previously received. But in either case, that's where it's at right now. It's also worth noting in semi-auto mode, this is something I covered in yesterday's video, they put a pretty significant fire rate cap on that, so you can no longer spam it at a ridiculous fire rate or use a modded controller to get a crazy fire rate with it. After that, the FR556 got a little bit of a damage buff just in the second damage range, between about 38 meters and 48 meters. And with this one, it just makes it so we now have a 4-shot kill potential to the body. Honestly, you probably won't notice too much of a difference here just because it's still going to be a 2-burst kill with a 4 or a 5-shot kill. Now, let's get into the MCW. This one caught a few different nerfs. The first one to the base gun was just to its sprint out time. It was slowed down from 220 milliseconds to 241 milliseconds. So just like with the Holger 556, it'll be slightly less effective for playing really aggressively. Next, the 16.5-inch Cyclone barrel on the MCW. This one caught several nerfs because this was the most powerful barrel that most people were using. And effectively with this, they decreased the damage range benefit, they decreased the bullet velocity benefit, and they increased the sprint to fire time penalty a little bit as well. So those are all the nerfs that happened with this. However, they did slightly buff the hip fire with it. They decreased the hipfire spread penalty by 5% and decreased our tactical stance spread penalty by 5% as well. So it's not quite as punishing in those areas, but overall this was absolutely a net nerf to this barrel. As for the next attachment that was nerfed for the MCW specifically, this is the RB Regal Heavy stock, which is the best stock for recoil control on this gun. And they just made it so it's slightly less effective at controlling recoil. And as you can see, pre-patch versus post-patch, it's not a significant difference. It's still helping you nicely with your recoil. And I still consider it to be a very good attachment on this. It's just not going to be quite as amazingly accurate as it was pre-patch. On top of that, they added a little bit more penalty to your movement speed as well as sprint to fire speed with this attachment. And then finally for the MCW, the Jack Raven kit specifically saw a little bit of an adjustment. Basically what they did here is they just made it so the upper torso damage also applies to the arms, just like you see with most of the other guns in the game. Whereas previously the arm shots were counting as the base damage. So that just makes this a little bit more forgiving and a little easier to use, but not a massive buff by any means. And that covers it for the Modern Warfare 3 assault rifles that changed. Now let's get into some of the Modern Warfare 2 assault rifles. And some of these I will show some graphics because I think it is quite important, like the STB 556. This one just saw a bunch of range changes, which as you can see here, these are significant buffs to our ranges. At the end of the day, I still consider the STB to be a lower tier gun, like 324 milliseconds to kill. That's still on the slower side for assault rifles, even though that range has been massively increased. So while it's definitely a lot better than it was pre-patch, it's still not incredible. Next, with the Kastov 762, what they did with this is previously it required upper torso or arm shots for that bonus damage, and now they've just applied that damage to the entire body, which just makes this far more consistent because previously in the maximum damage range, it was very unforgiving. You had to land 3 out of your 4 shots to the upper torso or arms in order to maintain a 4-shot kill, whereas now it doesn't matter where you shoot them in the body, it will always be a 4-shot kill up close. After that, the Chimera saw a little bit of a damage boost in the maximum damage range, and effectively all this did is it made it so this is now a much more consistent 5-shot kill up close. Previously, you had to land all 5 shots to the torso or arms if you wanted that 5-shot kill, whereas now you only have to land 3 out of your 5 shots to the torso or arms, so it's a lot less likely to be a 6-shot kill up close now. Then with the Tempest Razorback, we saw a significant boost to our 5-shot kill potential, and on top of that, there was a bit of a damage boost in that range, which just makes it far more forgiving. Previously, you had to hit all 5 shots to the torso or arms if you wanted to get that 5-shot kill, whereas now only 3 out of those 5 shots need to hit in that area, so it's just going to be a lot more consistent while also having a much better range, and this gun has a great time to kill, so I would actually say this is one of the more significant buffs from this update, and you may want to give this gun a shot now because it should be quite good. As for the next Modern Warfare 2 assault rifle, this is the FR Avancer, and this one saw a very significant buff. What they did here is they boosted the maximum damage range to the point where we can now get a 5-shot kill to the body, whereas previously it was a 6-shot kill even at point blank range, which means we can now kill in 260 milliseconds, which is a very, very fast time to kill in this game. But in order to compensate for that, of course, they did reduce our maximum damage range, but this is still a very good maximum damage range when you consider how fast you're able to kill within that range. So again, this is one of the really standout buffs from this update, and I definitely recommend giving this gun a shot if you haven't already. After that, the M16 saw a few adjustments, and surprisingly, the first adjustment is actually nerfed the minimum damage, which means the damage at really long ranges. Previously, it had a 5-shot kill potential in those ranges. Now, it's a 6-shot kill in those ranges, so it's definitely less effective at long range. However, they did buff the sprint out time from 210 milliseconds down to 189 milliseconds, and they reduced our aim down sight time from 290 milliseconds to 240 milliseconds. So overall, the M16 should be a little bit better at getting around the map for those like close to mid-range encounters, but it is nerfed for the longer range encounters. Then let's have a look at the Cast-Off 74U, and with this one, they eliminated one of the damage ranges, and we overall saw some range buffs here. And on top of this, in the minimum damage range, it's no longer an 8-shot kill, it's now a 7-shot kill. So that's great to see. It was kind of ridiculous that this ever dropped off to an 8-shot kill in the past. Now, I still don't consider the 74U to be a great gun in this game, but it should be at least a little bit more consistent and usable now. And then finally, for the assault rifle category, the Cast-Off 545 saw a reduction to its maximum damage range, but they also boosted the damage in that range a bit. So now we only need 1 headshot mixed in with body shots up close in order to get a 4-shot kill. So it's got better potential up close, but that up close range has been reduced. Our overall 5-shot kill potential, though, to the body is still the same at 40 meters. And then finally with this, they reduced our aim down sight time from 240 milliseconds down to 225 milliseconds. So overall, a net buff to the Cast-Off 545. And there we go, that finally wraps it up for all of the assault rifle changes. Now let's get into battle rifles. And the first thing that changed, finally, is the Sidewinder. And what they did with this is they decreased the recoil and gun kick while firing. And let's have a look at it first in full auto mode. As you can see, there's a very noticeable reduction to our overall magnitude of recoil. I will say this gun still does jump around quite a bit, and it is still a very difficult recoil pattern to control and predict. So while the recoil plot looks significantly better, don't let that fool you, this is still a pretty tough gun to control, and it's no different in semi-auto. We do see a very noticeable improvement compared to pre-patch, but it's still quite a tricky gun to get a handle on if you're spamming at the maximum fire rate. And that was it for changes to the Modern Warfare 3 battle rifles. However, many of the Modern Warfare 2 battle rifles did change. So let's just quickly dive into that. With the Lockman 7.62, in semi-auto mode, it saw a damage buff in its maximum damage range, so it's now capable of getting a 3-shot kill to the body up close, whereas previously it was a 4-shot kill. So that's actually a considerable buff to the Lockman 7.62 in semi-auto mode. Then in full auto mode, what they've done here is they've now applied the torso damage to the arms as well, so it should be a lot more consistent overall. However, this also came with a bit of a nerf in the minimum damage range at long ranges. Now it's a 6-shot kill, whereas previously it had a 5-shot kill potential to the body. Overall, though, I do consider this to be a net buff to the Lockman 7.62. Next, with the Cronin Squall in full auto mode, it saw a damage buff in the maximum damage range, so up close. Previously, the best we could do to the body was a 5-shot kill up close, whereas now it's a 4-shot kill as long as you're hitting upper torso and arm shots, which does give us a pretty significant improvement to our time to kill potential up close in full auto mode with this gun. Next, with the FTAC Recon in semi-auto mode, they applied the upper torso and arm damage, that bonus damage you get there, they applied that to the entire torso now, so it should be a bit more consistent. Additionally, they decreased our aim down sight time from 270 milliseconds down to 250 milliseconds. And then in full auto mode, they just equalize the damage to the entire body. So it doesn't matter if you're shooting them in the leg or the upper torso, you deal the same damage. And right up close and personal, this actually didn't change anything because it didn't matter previously anyway with how the damage profile worked out. But at mid to longer ranges, you may notice some improved consistency with the FTAC Recon in full auto. And then finally for battle rifles, the SO14 saw some changes. In semi-auto mode, they increased our maximum damage from 41 to 46. However, when I look at the numbers, this didn't really change the effectiveness of this gun in any meaningful way. But then in full auto mode, just like with the FTAC Recon, they've equalized the damage to the entire body, whereas previously we had several different body multipliers, and this should just improve the overall consistency. However, at long ranges, we used to have a 6-shot kill potential to the body if you were hitting the right multipliers. Now it'll drop off to a 7-shot kill. So for any range aside from that, you should notice improved consistency, but then in that range, it is nerfed for those nerfed for the longer range engagements. And with that out of the way, we can move into the SMG category, and the first one was a big surprise. They actually buffed the WSP Swarm. What they did here is they just increased our first 2 damage ranges, and I really don't think this gun needed any buffs at all. I thought it was one of the better SMGs pre-patch, but it's gonna be a little bit better now post-patch. Next, with the Rival 9, they stated in the patch notes they decreased the horizontal recoil slightly, but I believe that was a typo because the horizontal recoil definitely seems to be increased when we look at pre-patch versus post-patch here. So this gun will be noticeably less accurate now. And on top of this, with the MTZ Marauder stock, they decreased the firing aim stability stat benefit by 5% on this, so it was a bit of a nerf to that stock, which was really powerful pre-patch. And honestly, it's still probably your best bet in the stock category. I'm still going to be running this, but it is slightly less effective now post-patch. And then finally for the Modern Warfare 3 SMGs, with the Striker 9, they effectively just reverted the nerf that they gave to it previously, and it once again has a 5-shot kill potential in that maximum damage range, which is really good news. I thought that nerf was way out of line in the past, and I think the Striker 9 is actually going to be quite a solid choice now after this update. Then for Modern Warfare 2 SMGs, the Lockman Shroud saw some adjustments. The first thing they did is they buffed the damage values up a little bit in the first 2 damage ranges. So up close, it's got a little bit more damage, but then they applied the base damage to like the legs, for instance. They applied that everywhere to the body. So we actually lose that bonus damage to the upper torso and arms. And at the end of this, it's going to be more consistent and effective in close quarter situations because it'll still take you 4 to 5 shots to kill in the first 2 damage ranges, just like pre-patch. But now in the longer ranges, it's going to take you an extra shot to kill. So this gun got more consistent up close, but worse overall at a distance. After that, with the Fennec 45, they took the bonus damage with this, which previously applied to the torso and arms, and now it applies to the entire body, so it's going to be a lot more forgiving and consistent, especially in the 2nd and 3rd damage ranges, and you should really notice an improvement with that. And on top of this, they improved our aim down sight time. It was 200 milliseconds, now it's 190 milliseconds, and they reduced our sprint to fire time from 110 milliseconds down to 99 milliseconds. And to top all of that off, they slightly increased our maximum damage range from 10.7 meters up to 12.7 meters. So overall, these are some really nice buffs to the Fennec 45. Next, with the BAS-P, we once again saw them apply the bonus damage to the entire body, so it's going to be a lot more consistent with body shots. However, they also decreased our maximum damage range from 18.8 meters down to 16.3 meters. Overall, I do consider this to be a net buff, though. It should be a lot more consistent for you. After that, with the Lockman sub, they extended our bonus damage from the upper torso and arms to now cover the full torso and arms. And in our 2nd damage range from 8.9 meters to 17 meters, they increased our damage a little bit, so it's just more forgiving. Previously, we had to land all 5 shots to the upper torso and arms to get a 5-shot kill, whereas now we just need to land 3 out of our 5 shots anywhere to the torso or arms in order to get that 5-shot kill. So this will be a fairly noticeable buff to the Lockman sub. And then finally for SMGs, with the MX9, they noticeably improved the damage we deal to the legs, which means we don't rely on those bonus shots nearly as much. So this just means that we're going to see a lot more consistency with this gun across the board. And to top that off, they decreased our aim down sight time from 220 milliseconds down to 200 milliseconds, and they decreased our sprint to fire time from 110 milliseconds down to 88 milliseconds. And there we go, let's dive into shotguns, and I'm going to blast through this category fairly quickly. With the Lockwood 680, they increased the sprint to fire time from 184 milliseconds up to 200 milliseconds, so that is a nerf. And they also nerfed the sawed-off mod stock on the Lockwood 680. They basically just reduced the benefits that you gain from this and increased the downsides. Then for Modern Warfare 2 shotguns, with the Lockwood 300, they decreased the minimum damage on the 12-gauge slug from 75 to 57. So at longer ranges, we're dealing less damage with a slug. And this is really only going to be noticeable if you're also combining that with the Maelstrom dual trigger action. Because when you use that trigger, you're firing 2 slugs at once. And previously, even at really long ranges, you could get a one-shot kill because we were dealing 75 damage per slug, whereas that is no longer the case. We're only dealing 57 damage per slug. And then on top of that, with that dual trigger, they reduced our maximum damage range and our second damage range as well. Then with the MWII 12, they increased our medium damage range very slightly from 10.4 meters up to 12.4 meters, and they also decreased the pellet spread when we're aiming down sights. And you can see here, pre-patch versus post-patch, it does look slightly better and more consistent post-patch compared to pre-patch. After that though, with the Bryson 800, they decreased the sprint to fire time from 182 milliseconds down to 145 milliseconds, so that's a buff. And they decreased our aim down sight time from 350 milliseconds down to 300 milliseconds, so another buff there. And then finally for shotguns, with the Bryson 890, they increased the fire rate. In the patch notes they mentioned it went from 150 rounds per minute to 164 rounds per minute. But the actual experienced rate of fire, when you account for all animations that need to take place between firing those shots, our realistic rate of fire went from 69 rounds per minute up to 73 rounds per minute. Now, let's get into the LMG category, and the Holger 26 got a noticeable buff here. It now has an infinite 5-shot kill potential, as long as you're hitting 3 out of those 5 shots to the torso or arms in that minimum damage range. So definitely a nice buff there for longer ranges. Then with the DG58 LSW, they decreased our sprint to fire time from 294 milliseconds down to 231 milliseconds, and they decreased our aim down sight time from 370 milliseconds down to 320 milliseconds. After that, with the second MG38, they extended the bonus damage from upper torso and arms to now cover the entire torso and arms, and they decreased our aim down sight time from 430 milliseconds down to 410 milliseconds. And then finally for LMGs, the HCR56 saw a reduction to our sprint to fire time from 250 milliseconds down to 225, and for our aim down sight time, this was reduced from 390 milliseconds down to 310 milliseconds. As for Marksman rifles, the DM56 saw an increase to a sprint to fire time from 168 milliseconds to 199 milliseconds, so a little bit of a nerf there to this gun. However, not nearly as bad of a nerf as the nerf to the MTZ Interceptor. Previously, we had an infinite one-shot kill potential to the head or the neck, so at any range you could get a one-shot kill. Now they reduced those multipliers to the point where we can only get that one-shot kill to the head and neck in the first damage range, so out to 38 meters. Then with the EBR-14, they decreased the sprint to fire time and decreased our aim down sight time, which is quite nice to see. With the Lockwood Mark II, they also decreased our aim down sight time with this very slightly, and they improved our hip fire spread while standing by 10%. With the Tempest Torrent, they applied the bonus damage to the torso and arms to the entire body now, so it's a lot more forgiving. And then with the crossbow, they adjusted our damage profile a little bit, but it's still not a one-shot kill anywhere in the body, even at point-blank range. It's only going to be a one-shot kill to the head. And it's the same story with the Bright Blaze 20-inch bolts. These ones also saw some adjustments, but realistically, it didn't really affect this because it's still not a one-shot kill to the body. And then finally for Marksman rifles, the LMS saw a reduction to its sprint to fire time, as well as a reduction to its aim down sight time. Now, let's get into the sniper rifles, and with the KATT AMR, they just nerfed the Zang 34 barrel. They decreased the damage range benefit as well as the bullet velocity benefit a little bit. Then with the KV Inhibitor, this one actually saw a notable nerf. Previously, this gun was always going to be a one-shot kill to the upper torso and arms at any range, whereas now they adjusted the range values and added an additional range. So beyond 61 meters, you have to hit them in the head or the neck to get a one-shot kill now. Overall, on the 6v6 maps, you shouldn't notice much of a difference, but this will noticeably nerf this on like ground war, for instance. After that, with the Victus XMR, they increased the lower torso damage. So now in the first 2 damage ranges, you can get a one-shot kill to the lower torso, whereas previously you had to hit the upper torso. And then finally for sniper rifles, with the KARAK 300, they increased the recoil center speed very significantly. You can see pre-patch, when you fire this gun, it wouldn't really recenter at all, and after firing a full mag, you'd be looking almost straight up. Whereas post-patch, you're still kicking up a little bit and it still doesn't fully recenter itself, but this is still an extreme improvement to this gun. And this just leaves us with the pistol category, and with the tier, they increased our second damage value a little bit so we can get a one-shot kill to the upper torso in the second damage range, whereas previously we couldn't. And they increased our minimum damage, which makes this a one-shot kill at all ranges to the head, whereas previously you couldn't get a one-shot kill to the head at long range. Now, on top of that, they did increase our second damage range from 15.2 meters down to 11.4 meters, but this is a net buff because within that range, you're a lot more powerful. On top of this, they very noticeably improved the pre-fire delay, or that double action trigger delay, from 150 milliseconds down to 90 milliseconds, and this buff also carried forward to the triggers. Now finally, with the 9mm Daemon, the Modern Warfare 2 pistol, the first thing they did is they just consolidated some of the body multipliers. So previously we had 3 separate body multipliers. Now we just have our torso and arm damage, as well as our leg damage, and then of course head and neck shot damage. But on top of this, they boosted our damage values to the point where this used to be a 4 to 6 shot kill, and now it's a 3 to 6 shot kill. So this was a very nice buff to the 9mm Daemon. But in order to compensate for that, they also reduced our damage range values by 22 to 44%. And there we go. That finally wraps it up for the list of all of the weapon balancing that took place with yesterday's update. This was a ridiculously long video that took so much time and so much overtime to put together. So I really hope you guys can appreciate the amount of work that went into this one. One thing to keep in mind is there were also some changes to the Stormender launcher, which I intended to cover in this video, but in my testing, I found out that they just broke this entirely, and therefore I'm planning on making a separate video covering what exactly is wrong with the Stormender, because it's not working as intended. And with that, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this weapon balancing that took place with yesterday's update. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.